Hi gang, Kelly Milligan here, the Vice President in Dallas Area Council for Chicago Title, doing some sort of updated, cool, high-tech video presentation that I hope will benefit all of you as you're gathered together for today's meetings. Now, just sort of as a disclaimer up front, I'm the one low-tech guy in a company full of people who get computer technology, so the whole idea of doing this via video actually kind of scares the crap out of me. There's every possibility that this will be an unmitigated disaster. Nonetheless, I'm going to try to give you 5 minutes of good, useful information on the state of the market and a little bit about the economy in general, working within about a 5-minute parameter so that I don't bore you all to sleep or make you want to go diving off of the top of the building that you're in. Let's start by talking a little bit about the state of the Dallas area housing market. As most of you know, things are good. They continue to be good. They've been good for a little while. We knew as 2012 was going on that we were having a great year. We could see increased signs of life. We saw more sales. We saw more dollar volume almost every month as we were looking at the Netris data. And sure enough, when we get to the end of 2012, the Netris data for almost every little zone within the reporting area, fantastic, particularly in the areas served by the agents in your office. When we get into North Dallas and Collin County and then those easternmost parts of Denton County, we could see that it was really a tremendous year. For example, Allen, sales up 13%, dollar volume up 12%. Far North Dallas, Netris Zone 10, sales up 28.7%, dollar volume up almost 35%, median sale price up good there too. And on down the road, you look at Fairview, you look at Frisco, you look at some of the areas in North Dallas, Plano, McKinney, everywhere, almost across the board, what we saw was increased sales, increased dollar volume, and yet we still saw increases in both median and average sale price throughout much of the year for 2012. When you add it all up, we knew that sales and dollar volume were up. Well, it turned out we did about 16% better in 2012 than we did in 2011. Best year we've had since 2008. But prices also rose big in 2012. Dallas area median sale price for the fourth quarter of 2012 was up 7.5% over the fourth quarter of 2011 alone. So not only did we see a good year, but we saw a strong finish. We got a little more vindication when the Case-Shiller report came out earlier this month. As a lot of you know, Case-Shiller is a nationwide report that tracks housing prices in the largest markets in the United States. For a long time, reading Case-Shiller was sort of like reading the poetry of Sylvia Plath. You wanted to go stick your own head in an oven by the time you were done, because every month it was just more bad news. We went through a phase of like 36 months in a row where prices were just tanking everywhere. Well, we finally started to work our way out of that, and when Case-Shiller came back looking at the end of the year, Dallas home prices up 6.5% in the December or year-end survey. That's the best we've done in more than 12 years, according to Case-Shiller. You can find the specifics on that in an article that ran in the Dallas Morning News on February 8th of this year. We're still not where we were at the top of the market before things kind of collapsed. 2006, really the peak of the market. And we're not quite back to where we were then, but clearly we're on the right track. We've seen some real positives in the housing market, but it's been good news in all sectors. I've talked about this some before. I think if you really want a sense of the housing recovery, look at the price points. We did really well last year between $250,000 and $350,000. That's kind of middle high end, or generally it's above the starter level. And when we see traffic moving and we see homes selling in that range, we know that we've got a good solid foundation for what we call our housing recovery. But as I pointed out a couple of times, we also saw more traffic and volume in the higher price point areas, like the Park Cities, like Dallas Area 11, South Lake, Fairview, the places where you're going to find the more expensive homes. We saw more activity going on there. We think that's a good sign because it speaks both to consumer confidence and to perhaps an easing of liquidity problems that put the damper on transactions in those areas in previous years. The other thing that we've noted is that the distressed property sector seems to be, I don't know if recovering is the right word, but what we know is that in January we saw 50% fewer foreclosures than we did in January of 2012. So there seems to be some easing in the foreclosure market, which is always a good sign. And then finally, when we look at the builder market, new construction is really rebounding. Now we've got a long way to go there too before we get back to where we were in pre-crash levels. But according to the Dallas Morning News, builders started more than 4,500 new homes in the Metroplex during the fourth quarter of 2012, and they sold almost 16,500, which is the most since 2009. New home sales were up 20% in the fourth quarter of last year over the fourth quarter of 2011. That's the sixth quarter in a row where builders in the Metroplex have posted higher numbers. Now, even with all that, we're still really only about a third of where we were before things went bad in 2007, but it's a sure sign that builders are kind of sensing that it's safe to get back in the water. There's definitely demand out there for the units that they're putting on the ground, so the builders are rocking and rolling. Well, the good news continues as we get into 2013. Now, we know looking at January numbers that it was one of the best Januaries we've seen in a number of years. We had, according to the Netris reporting area zones, we were up almost 25% over where we were in January. Why is the camera doing this? Okay, there we go. See, I told you this was going to be awful. Thank you for bearing with me. At any rate, we don't have the February Netris numbers yet, but we were able to pull a few things off of the Texas A&M Real Estate Center's website that gives us a picture of what January looked like in the three counties that we serve here. Collin County, for example, sales up 18% over January of 2012, dollar volume up 21%, median sale price up 10%. If you go to Dallas County, sales up 24%, dollar volume up almost 30%, median sale price up 5%. Then go over to Denton County and have a look there. Sales up 50%, tremendous increase in Denton County. Dollar volume up 60% and median sale price up 12%. Where's the bad news in all of this? Well, if you've been out there, you already know. The bad news is inventory. As of January, we were being told that we were about 26% below where we were the previous year, and the numbers that I just quoted from the Real Estate Center tend to confirm that. Inventories in Collin County down 29% from last year. We're at 2.1 months of inventory. Some of the Netris zones, you measure inventory in like weeks. You go to Dallas County, same thing. Inventory down 26%, right at 2.1 months. And in Denton County, down 30%, down to 2.3 months. Why are we having all of this problem with inventory? Homes are flying off the market, prices are going up. Why aren't people listing? Nobody's really come up with a really good reason. I read an article in January that really made me laugh. It suggested that, well, this is a temporary thing. We'll see more people start listing once the Super Bowl is over. I mean, really? Why would we be waiting for the end of the football season to start listing homes? And why would that matter anyway in Dallas, where thanks to Jerry Jones, football season is pretty much meaningfully over in October? I couldn't make any sense of that. Then another article that we saw in the morning news suggested that because we're all over borrowed, that we don't have enough equity in our homes to sell. And I don't know that I'm buying that one either. Our home equity loan laws max you out at 80% loan to value, so everybody ought to have at least enough equity to sell and pay their closing costs. I just don't know that I find that real compelling. But one thing is for certain, if there is any upper limit on sales and dollar volume this year, it's going to be inventory. And for most of you, you pretty much have seen it. I talked to some agents this weekend at a gathering, and I heard anecdotally about going to have a showing, and it was like an open house because you ran into 12 other agents with their clients all at the same time. There's a lot of competition for the properties that are out there. Hopefully we're going to see some new listings here in the months ahead that will ease a little bit of this crunch. But one thing's for certain. Analysts have been saying for over a year, and there it goes doing that again, that as long as we don't, as long as inventory remains where it is, it's going to continue to do good things for prices. So use that as a talking point. If you've got people that are on the fence, explain to them, home prices are going up. We don't know that it's going to last indefinitely. Let's get out there and take advantage of the market. It's a good time to put your property on the market. So summing up, things are rocking along pretty nicely here in the Metroplex. Is there any bad news? Well, yes and no, and that's where we turn to the national stage. I want to talk a little bit about the sequester. And here's the camera doing weird things again. The sequester, it's kind of fun to say. I want everybody out there to say it with me. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Sequester. None of you did that, did you? See, that's one of the reasons I hate video. It kind of lacks the immediacy. But at any rate, you're hearing a lot of talk about the sequester, and I wanted to kind of give you a few points to think about it as you hear more in the news media in the days and weeks ahead. The sequester is basically a Washington term for some automatic cuts in baseline expenditures that were agreed to by the White House and Congress back in 2011 in exchange for an increase in the debt ceiling. Obama wanted to be able to borrow more money. Congress said, we're not going to let you do it unless we make budget cuts. Nobody wanted to make specific cuts that close to an election, so the White House came up with a mechanism whereby if we didn't agree on specific cuts by a certain date, $85 billion in automatic cuts would kick in. And although a lot of people are trying to point the finger and blame others for it, Bob Woodward was right. This was the White House's idea. They were the ones that came up with the concept. In any event, because the White House basically couldn't get more tax increases, they had to kind of go along with their original plan, the sequester. So effective March 1, we saw $85 billion cut from federal baseline budgeting. What does this mean? This is the tricky part. You're going to hear the media talk about how this is $85 billion less than the government is spending. That's not accurate. What this means is the rate of growth in federal spending is actually being cut by about $85 billion. Washington uses a neat little trick. Since nobody there wants to actually do the hard work of passing a budget, they do what's called baseline appropriation. Every year that we don't have a budget, there are automatic levels of increase for every federal program. Left to their own devices with no budget, no cuts, baseline spending will increase by a certain number every year. What these cuts that came about from the sequester really mean is the rate of increase has been cut by $85 billion. Washington will still be spending more money in 2013 than they did in 2012, and you know they're going to be spending more than they have, but the bottom line is it's now become a political football. They're trying to make it look like the whole world is going to come to an end because federal programs won't be growing at the same rate they did last year. If you want to see how big of a problem it really is, you might take a look at the stock market. It's about 4:15 as I'm doing this. When the Dow ended today, it was up 38 points. Investors really didn't give a darn about the sequester, and most anybody who knows what's going on isn't real worried about it either. The thing to watch for will be the end of the month. We're going to have another budget showdown as we prepare a continuing resolution to fund government operations, and we've got to do that since, oh God, nobody wants to pass a budget. So we're going to get more political theatrics, but don't worry too much about the sequester. Planes won't be falling out of the sky. You shouldn't have furloughed federal workers coming to your house begging for food. Roads aren't going to collapse automatically. Although, hey, in some parts of Texas you wouldn't notice if they did. But bottom line, sequester won't be the end of the world, even though there are lots of people out there who want you to believe it. Putting a little bit of a cherry on this whole thing. The federal government and the federal economic outlook always remains the big dark cloud on the horizon, but as I've been saying for a while, we should be event-free in 2013 to at least enough of an extent that we'll get through this year all right. The market here is working in our favor. Conditions are good, the local and regional economy are strong. We can just get a few more listings, it's going to be a good year for all of us. So work hard, work smart, save your money and keep your powder dry because it could get weird next year, but it looks like we're off to the races with a great 2013. Enjoy the rest of your meeting. I'd love to take questions, but I can't. Thanks.